In the United States, someone dies from suicide every 12 minutes. Maybe that's the length of your drive to work or school, or when you're watching your favorite TV show. That's enough for 2 deaths. 2 deaths could happen during one episode of your favorite show. And one of the biggest risk factors for suicide is mental illness, which this is including all kinds of disorders like depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, and all of those are risk factors for suicide. So mental health services that are important for treating these illnesses are not always available to everyone, and they are critical because they save lives. Lots of people, many students especially, have suffered with mental illnesses or at least battled problems with their own mental health. And me personally, I know that I have, and I'm not ashamed to admit that. My goal is to help everyone feel cared about and supported and listened to. My name is Grace Thrasher, and today I want to talk about the importance of mental health, the stigma surrounding it, and the problems that millions of people face in accessing treatment. So the first thing I want to talk about is how important mental health is. Everyone has good days and bad, but that's really your mental health or your well-being as a person, and that aspect of your physical health is important as well. So things like stress and social media and even sleep will affect your mental health, but there are certain disorders that are categorized as mental illnesses. And lots of people have their own ways to cope with mental health. Self-care, meditation, things like that are important to maintain a sense of balance in your own life. But the amount of people that suffer from mental illness, according to the National Institute of Health, is around 46.6 million. And that's about 1 in 5, but the number for younger people in our demographic, is much larger. That's about 1 in 4 for the age group 18 to 25. And I conducted a survey. Out of 23 students, 20 said that at some point they had struggled with their own mental health. They either agreed or strongly agreed with that statement, which these numbers are high right now, but the trend shows that they're increasing. So the problem is severe. People are suffering with these mental illnesses, but it can lead to much worse things like suicide attempts. And according to the CDC, suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in the United States alone, and for the age group 10 to 34, it is the second highest cause of death. So care needs to be available to these people, to all people, not just people with severe mental illnesses or people with a history of suicide attempts. All people need access to mental health. Oh no, sorry. Here's a graph. It shows the suicide rate by race, and you can see it's increased with just about every race. And you can see comparatively what it's doing to all of the different races. The biggest one being the non-Hispanic white demographic. And then this graph here at the bottom shows the mental illnesses categorized by state. So you can see Indiana has a fairly low ranking for mental health nationwide, but you can see just how bad it is everywhere. Here are the results to my survey. The second thing that I want to talk about is the stigma surrounding mental health. So there are actually multiple stigmas surrounding mental health, which is something that a lot of people don't know. The first kind of stigma around it is the public stigma. So that would be your perception of the perception of others on you. So that would be the way that society looks at you, and one of the biggest things affecting that is the media's effect on that. So in movies, TV shows, and books and things over decades is how people see mental health. So sometimes people see them as irresponsible or reckless or even childlike, and that has created a huge negative stigma from the public's point of view, and that influences the self-stigma as well, because if you have low self-esteem, you don't want to step away from the crowd, you don't want to ostracize yourself from society, and you certainly could be afraid of feeling weak or anything like that. You can see on these these pictures I have here, you're faking it, people will blame you, or you'll blame yourself. And that's what the stigma is with mental health. And along with that, only 1 in 8 people have ever sought mental health treatment. And that could be with problems that they've had in trying to seek mental health, but it also could be just their fear of trying to do that. And I want to talk about the inaccessibility of mental health treatment next. I have some pictures here, but I'll explain those in just a second. Mental health is often treated with things like therapy or rehab or even inpatient treatments in hospitals and institutions. But there are lots of problems that people have found in seeking treatment. One of the biggest, which you can see here, 43.7 is the percent of people that could not afford the cost. And that's because a lot of times insurance doesn't cover it. 25% of people have had to choose between buying necessities or buying things like antidepressants or going to therapy, things like that, and that should never be the case. With this picture here, you can see your mental health and your physical health should be equal because they're all part of your well-being and your wellness and your health as a whole. So along with that, some of the other problems people have faced with accessing treatment is that it's confusing or it's overwhelming. Here it says they didn't have time or they did not know where to go, because it's overwhelming to see all of the hotlines and the advertisements, because with the capitalist society, you're trying to make money. Same with the insurance. So a lot of people give up or they never seek treatment because it's just so difficult to navigate. And another problem is that there are actual economic and racial disparities in getting treatment. So the most treatment available is in white, rich neighborhoods, and that should never be an issue as well. Mental illness does not care about ethnicity or socioeconomic background. It doesn't care at all about where you came from or who you are. You can see on here, they didn't want others to find out. That's the stigma. They don't know where to go. Oftentimes people need transportation, or it could have a negative effect on the job. They can't take time off or get childcare, and they can't afford that. So those are some of the problems with accessing treatment. It should always be available to everyone. So in conclusion, I hope you understand how important mental health is to everyone. It's important to women, children, young, old. Everyone is affected by it. And I hope you understand the problems in accessing treatment, both the stigma and the perception of seeking treatment and the actual physical action of doing it. Sometimes people are ashamed of who they are, and that should never be the case. There should never be any fear in that, because it's the most responsible decision. And there should not be any obstacles in seeking treatment based on cost or your job. I hope that you understand the importance in all of this, and you're now aware of the issues that we face today in the mental health crisis. No one should ever have to feel like they're suffering. They should always have an option, and so should you.